I think this is the big question here, Megan, when we're looking at a company like Etsy. We know it's had a huge year. We know it's done really, really well. Now the question is, was 2020 about making things work during the pandemic and kind of bridging the gap, or is there true trend shift behavior? Just because stores are reopened, am I going to just stop the luxurious lifestyle of logging on my cell phone on a company like Etsy.com and just making purchases without having to leave my house? Am I going to be that excited to go to the store?
I think that it's interesting because Etsy is being propelled by a couple of trends that we track. Obviously, the e-commerce trend, we saw more consumers talking about buying things online than they did last year. I don't think that that's a surprise for anyone. Another trend that we're watching is buying these personalized gifts or buying personalized items. That's where Etsy really shines. And we saw those mentions increase about 27% in the past month versus the prior year. So you do see an increase of consumers wanting to buy these personalized gifts. And I think that's partially what's allowing Etsy to have an edge versus its competitors. You can see right here, this is the purchase intent growth in the past month versus prior year versus some competitors. And I see, you make a good point about eBay kind of dropping the ball there that, while from a volume perspective, Amazon and eBay certainly comprise a larger volume of mentions, Etsy is comprising the most rapid growth whenever you're looking at that. So I think that this is a growing platform. This is something that consumers are increasingly turning to. This is something that sellers are actually starting to turn to. We see a lot of boutiques that, previously didn't have an online presence now going to Etsy. I know that I experienced that firsthand. I bought my brother a Christmas present off Etsy and then later found out that the seller was about 30 minutes down the road. So I think it's really interesting in the way that Etsy has this discovery element. And so far, it's helping to propel its growth.
Yeah, Megan, when we look at these numbers and how do you compare? Here's my question. Your year-over-year purchase intent. How do you compare a company like Etsy to a company like Amazon? Is that teardrops and tidal waves that you're trying to compare? How do you put those two together and actually make a apples to apples comparison between the two when one is clearly so much more massive than the other?
Yeah, I think you look at a couple of things. You look at volume, and from a volume perspective, Etsy is trailing Amazon and eBay just from a sheer number of mentions. So that's one piece. You have to look at the growth perspective that eBay is starting to take a larger piece of the pie. So you want to see them continue to grow and you want to see them continue to make a dent there. I think another thing that you look at is sentiment. When we look at consumer happiness, when it comes to Etsy, it's about 80% positive. When you look at Amazon Prime, we're about 70% positive. When you look at eBay, we're about 60% positive. So those are some pretty big swings, right? And so you see that Etsy, they've really doubled down on, they've required their sellers to, offer free shipping or certainly incentivize the sellers to offer free shipping. And that's really helped consumers and improve that experience. And so I think that they're starting to see some return on that. And you can see here, this is the purchase intent mentioned for the quarter that just ended. So there's a little bit of tempering from Q3. I think a lot of the volume that you saw in Q3 actually came from mask purchases. They sold about 24 million masks in quarter 3. So I think you see a little bit of quarter over quarter softness, but a 91% year over year growth. That's still pretty impressive. That's still a really strong holiday season, especially when you look at the growth rates of some of their other competitors and understand the environment that they're sitting in, that e-commerce was so critical this holiday season.
Megan, there's tons of economies of scale that we know. Obviously, a company like Amazon and how much it's kind of going through its marketplace and the shipping and everything, they're going to have tons of cost benefits from that massive size. And it kind of just becomes this behemoth just as simply off that. But one of the things that doesn't take place in that is often there's drop-offs in customer service. Customer service isn't necessarily an economy of scale. And often it suffers a little bit. So to see Etsy executing strongly on that front as a smaller competitor is probably what they need to do. But I want to make sure that we talk about that other company you had listed there, which is Shopify, and make the comparison here, because if I'm watching from home, I see Shopify's growth actually going a little bit quicker. And maybe I'm scratching my head and saying, doesn't that look a little bit concerning? But just to make sure we highlight this and make sure I understand it right,
Yeah.
that isn't necessarily a concern, Megan, because Shopify and Etsy, while they're doing similar things, they are different. Shopify is bringing a platform to a company, allowing them to build out their own kind of online shop. Etsy is actually a marketplace. You could actually be involved with both those companies as a small business together, and they're not necessarily working against each other.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You're never going to go to shopify.com and search for a handmade item for someone that you're trying to purchase for, but you can do that on Etsy. They're both platforms, though, that are allowing these small businesses that previously didn't have any sort of digital presence to meet consumers online. So I think it's interesting here that you see this huge surge to e-commerce and these two clear winners versus, I guess you could say, more established peers. So these are definitely ones that we're watching for future growth, especially in 2021. It'll be really interesting to see, now that consumers had this Etsy experience and they've interacted with these buyers, or with these sellers, if they'll continue to purchase, that they'll come back and purchase more. So I think that will be really key to watch moving forward to say, okay, are they keeping up with this incredible growth? So far it looked like in the last quarter they had a really strong holiday